What's up everybody, my name is Scott Paddock, and today I'm going to show you a few articulation tricks that can take your jazz lines to the next level. When I just played that opening line for you, I added some of the unwritten rules of articulation that can really bring a jazz line to life. Without those rules, this is the way the same line would sound. Now, of course, I'm still swinging the eighth notes, but once I add these unwritten rules in, the line is going to completely open up and have a lot of direction and really sound like it's going somewhere. This is what it sounds like. 1, 2, Obviously, that's a pretty drastic difference just by adding some articulation. So in today's video, we're going to talk about what we can do to these notes and what notes we should bring out that's really going to bring the line alive. Okay, so I will write the line below, right here. The very first measure starts on a C. It's basically a chord outline in the key of C. Pretty simple, right? So the note that is the important note, it's the goal note, is the top C. Now we're not going to accent it because that's a little bit too much. We're just going to bring it out. And there's really no symbol or articulation marking for just bump this note out a little bit. So I use a line going down just like this. So when you see that, that means that's kind of your goal note. That's one of the notes you want to emphasize a little bit, but you don't necessarily want to accent it. So this is what it sounds like if you just bring out that one note. Yeah, that opens up the line without it. With it. So the reason that note is important, one is the top of the phrase, and two, it's changing direction. So whenever you have a top of the phrase note or a changing direction note, always bring it out. Again, we're not going to actually accent it. We're just going to like lean into it a little bit. We're going to make it more important than some of the other notes. Okay, so let's move on to the second measure. We're going to play the first and second measure with no articulation, and then I'm going to add the articulation so we can talk about the differences. No articulation. Now I'm going to add the articulation. Did you hear that step up? The G, the B, and the C? I call those ricochet notes. The first note kind of sets up the second one kind of sets up the third one. So they're kind of like running into each other with other notes in between. So I also bring those out. Whenever you have like those jump notes like that, or ricochet notes like that, you always want to bring them out. Again, we don't want to accent it. If we accented it, it would sound like this. And that's just too much. We just want a little bit of motion and direction in the phrase. So you can hear those notes gradually getting louder, and I'm tonguing them a little bit stronger just to give it some motion. So the two measures together sound like this. Now, the B of the third measure is the land note. So we're landing on that B. So we're going to bring out the B because we're landing on the note. Bring that note out because it's a land note. Okay, so in the third measure, we're obviously landing on that B, and then the next note that's really important is the A, and we're actually going to accent that note. Whenever you have a long note is anything longer than a quarter note. Whenever you have a long note on the and or off the beat, we always want to bring that out. So we're going to accent that note. Again. And as you can hear, I'm also hitting that G sharp because it feels like a kind of an offbeat ricochet note also. So we're going to hit the A onto the G sharp. Here are the first three measures with no articulation, or just like regular articulation. And here are the first three measures with my little unwritten rules of articulation. Again, you can hear a ton of style as we add in these little, just really small adjustments just to give the line way more direction. Okay, so let's go on to the fourth measure. That's with articulation. This is without the articulation. Again, a really big difference. So in this one, we're going to ghost the B on the and of 2. By ghost, I just mean we're not going to bring it out as loud. You're still going to finger it. You're still going to get a little bit of sound out of it, but it's not going to be a full sounding B. It's going to sound like this. If I wasn't ghosting that note, it would sound like this. That's a full sounding B, and it just kind of messes up the way the phrase sounds. So we're going to ghost that note, and by ghosting that note, we're setting up the E. The E is the more important note because we're jumping to it. So we're going to lean into that note again. We're going to ghost the B and lean into the E. Take a listen to it. So the first 4 measures with the articulation that we've talked about sounds like this. All right, so now we are on the second line. So measure 5, we have a quarter note on the beat. And your general rule for quarter notes on the beat is dop, a quarter note on the beat. In other words, marcato, but I like to call accents by what they sound like. So I say dop, a quarter note on the beat. Now that rule is not a 100% of the time rule, but it's a pretty good guess. If you're not sure what to do with that note, you're going to dop it. Continuing on with measure 5, we're actually going to talk about measure 5 and measure 6 together. Measure 5, the end of measure 5, the and of 4, going into measure 6 has a whole bunch of eighth notes that are on the and. So all we're going to do to that is like play dots on them so that they sound shorter and separated. Again. Now, on measure 7, we have a quarter note on the beat, which we just talked about. In general, we dop quarter notes on the beat. But because we have all these ands right before it, we're actually going to play that note full value so that it stands out more. If we played it short, this is what it sounds like. Then it just sounds like another short eighth note, and that's not what we're going for. So we're going to play that quarter note on the beat long. But in general, when you have a quarter note on the beat, we want to dop it. So here is measure 5 going into measure 7. 1, 2, Then for measure 7, we have a little bit of a combination. For the and of 3, the eighth note, we're going to do what we did in the previous measure, in measure 6. We're just going to play it short. We're going to dot it. And then we land on that eighth note tied to the quarter note. So that's considered a long note, so we're going to accent it. So take a listen to that measure. Without the articulation, it would sound like this. With it. And our final measure, we just have pretty much straight eighth notes. So the only thing we're going to do is bring out the C. And we're bringing out the C because it's a jump note. Whenever you jump to a note, you want to bring that note out. Again, we're not accenting it. We're just making it, we're just kind of leaning into it a little bit. We're going to bump it a little bit. It's not going to be a full-on accent, but we just want to make it sound more important. This is what it sounds like when you bring that note out. This is what it sounds like if you don't. So again, just by leaning into that note a little bit, it just gives the line so much more direction. So take a listen to the whole phrase played with all of the articulation that we just talked about. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready. And that is how you use unwritten rules of articulation to change a line that could be just a little boring or a little flat into a really dynamic line with a whole bunch of range and a whole bunch of movement. Thanks for taking the time to check this video out. If you found it useful and helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends, and give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions about what we covered, please leave me a comment below. Also, if you have any requests for future videos, leave me a comment below. Thanks a lot.